Did you know that when you spend money, your brain actually releases tons of endorphins and dopamine? Yeah, when you go and you swipe your card to buy something that you want, or you hand over some cash to get something that you've been craving for a while, your brain hops you up on all different types of feel good hormones that your mind craves again and again. No wonder shopping can become such an addictive habit for so many people. And if you're not careful, that desire to get more and more of those feel good hormones can cause your life to spiral out of control if you're not careful. And I mean, like, every part of your life, from your ability to pay your bills to the type of career that you choose that doesn't necessarily align with what you want, but hey, it pays the bills, right? To the inability for you to actually keep some sort of sense of peace between you and your significant other. After all, what spouse is going to be okay with you spending all of the money for the down payment on the house, on clothes, shoes, and to help out some irresponsible friends who just can't seem to get their act together? And while there are thousands of money tips, tricks, hacks out there that are designed to help you curb your spending, they all boil down to essentially the same thing. They're spending rules. Think about it. When you get a recommendation, when you get some sort of strategy, when you get some sort of idea that's designed to help you keep more money in your bank account by spending less of it, really it's just a rule that you've put into place to help you accomplish the financial goals that you have set for yourself and your family. And in the same way that not all financial goals are fit for all households, well, the same goes with spending rules. The reality is that most spending rules do not work for every household, but there are a few that do. And that's why today I'm going to break down 6 spending rules that can work for absolutely any household and you really should consider implementing, especially if the coins are looking a little bit tight. Hey dreamers, and welcome back to my channel where we break down all things money so it can stop being an obstacle and start being what it's designed to be. A tool to help you create the life that God has designed just for you. Now, before we can start talking about these really good universal spending rules, I want to take a moment to introduce myself to the new people on the channel. I'm Tiana B. Cluis, an executive pastor, author, speaker, and money coach who's made it her mission to help Christian women trapped in the corporate life bust through the financial barriers that have her saying, wait, hold on, I can't do yet what it is you've called me to do, God. At the end of the day, if God is calling you to do something, build a business, build a ministry, build a nonprofit, well, we need to be doing that thing. And the last thing I want to do is have you trapped because a green cotton has decided to get in your way. This channel is all about helping you overcome that. So if that sounds like something that you need in your life, let me know by liking the video and following my channel by clicking the big red button below. Don't forget to hit the bell so that you're notified every time I drop brand new money tips and biblical strategies designed to help transform money from your biggest stumbling block into your greatest ally. Okay, now let's start diving into these spending rules. And you're going to see where in some of these spending rules, I'm going to talk about like your spouse or your significant other. And that's just because some of these spending rules are were created. Let me put it that way. They were created out of dealing with married couples with their money. However, these are methodologies that can be used with a single person. It just requires you to have a accountability buddy, someone that you really trust that you can have safe financial conversations with. It can be a best friend. It can be just a coworker who happens to be really good with money. It could be a money coach. Yes, it can. Or it really can just be anyone that you trust to have really good, honest conversations with about your financial situation, who you know is going to do everything that they can to steer you in the right direction. So sometimes when I say spouse, the person you should be thinking about might not be spouse. You might need to be thinking about accountability buddy if you're one of my single ladies out there. So rule number 1 is set a threshold of how much you can spend without discussing it with your spouse or your accountability buddy. Set a threshold. Set a limit. What is the amount of money that you can spend before you have to talk to your partner or the person that you trust with to have safe financial conversations? Now, this is going to vary from household to household. That's going to depend on a lot of factors. It's going to depend on how tight your budget is. In some households, you can spend, $1,000 and it doesn't even make you blink. For other families, it might be $200. And for some, if the budget's really tight, it might be as small as $50. Really, it just comes down to what it is that you and your spouse or accountability buddy agree to. Because at the end of the day, it's all about having accountability. Let's be real about this. If you know you have to have a discussion with someone before you buy something, well, there's a chance that if it wasn't a need, if it wasn't something that's really all that important, if it's something that doesn't align with your money goals, you might just decide not to make the purchase just to avoid the entire conversation. But then there's going to be other times when you're like super excited about something, but there's some important facts that maybe you overlooked, that you glossed over, that you didn't think to ask. And then, the person that you talk to, your spouse, your accountability buddy, because they think at things from a different angle, because they weren't there when the salesperson was talking, then they're going to see things a little bit differently, and they're going to help you figure out whether or not this is a purchase that really makes sense. So those purchases that we like low-key let ourselves get conned into, that sound really good and sound like they're going to be amazing, but actually aren't really good and aren't really amazing. Well, if we just have the conversation with our spouse or accountability buddy about it, we can actually avoid that situation in its entirety, as long as we are actually listening to the advice and the recommendations of our spouse and accountability buddy, which is a whole nother conversation. But that's rule number one. Make sure that you set a threshold and put it in writing. Write it down. Put in writing a threshold of what you can spend before you have to talk to your spouse or accountability buddy. Are you done yet? Are you done? Are you done with it? All right. Okay, good. Good. You're done. Whew, pardon me living. It is for the birds. May the Lord speed up the building of this house. Okay, amen. All right. Rule number 2 is for you to set a threshold amount for when you have to sleep on, or at least wait 24 hours before pulling the trigger on the purchase. So this is typically going to be a larger number. Usually it's going to be something like, $500, $750, $1,000 or more. But again, it's going to depend heavily on the household, on your budget, what you guys can and cannot afford. Now, as someone who has been very guilty of getting super excited about something that, again, sounded really awesome, sounded really amazing, I talked to my husband about it and I hyped him up. So now we're both hype about the thing. And then we go buy it. And later on, we realize we probably shouldn't have bought this. Yeah, I'm guilty of it. A lot of my clients are guilty of it. And so that's the reason why it's really important that you have a threshold in which you have to actually sleep on the purchase before you actually make the purchase. Again, your accountability buddy, especially if there's certain things that you guys both absolutely love, there's just going to be certain things that y'all will get super hype on together and might not think about critically. But if you take the time to go to sleep, more often than not, it gives you a little bit of time to calm all of that excitement down and really begin to think about it critically. It also gives you more time to recheck some things. So if you were talking to a salesperson, can you recheck the facts? It gives you an opportunity to go look at reviews. It gives you an opportunity to recheck your finances and make sure that you actually can afford it. Or to see if there's another place in which you can buy the same thing for cheaper. So sleeping on it, giving yourself 24 hours before you pull the trigger is very helpful and valuable, because it allows you to really just calm down and really start to think about it critically and do whatever research you need to do. Now, this strategy is going to result in you dealing with some really high pressure sales tactics from salespeople in certain situations, but that's only because they know that statistically, if you walk out of the store, if you walk off the lot, you're not going to come back, even if you promise that you are. But you have to stand firm, hold your ground, and say, no, I have a threshold, I have a system, I do not make purchases above a certain amount without thinking about them for at least 24 hours. So love you, sorry, but nope, I'll be back tomorrow if I decide I want to make this purchase, and boom, you know what I mean? Or you can just say no, because that's a whole sentence. But again, another conversation. Now, rule number 3 is actually something that I have picked up from corporations. If you go work in a corporation or even in some churches, you'll see that there is a number, a threshold that they have set where anything above that threshold has to be shopped around to 3 to 5 different vendors. Well, for a family that is, maybe funds are tight, or maybe you are the type who does impulse purchases, you both will get hyped up about something that you're excited about. Sometimes it's a really good idea to set this sort of limit as well. So you might decide that any purchase over $1,000 is going to be something where, okay, I have to look at least at 3 other stores before I can make the purchase. I have to look at least 5 other stores or 5 other similar products before I can make the purchase. And again, it's just all about taking the time to do your research. Maybe you can find a better, cheaper price. Maybe you'll begin to find that there's an alternative out there that is so much better than what you were getting or that has much higher reviews, that sort of thing. Again, it's about doing the research so that you're not hyped up and super excited about something and then you go make a really big purchase only to regret it later on or to be like, no, I could have gone without it. It actually results in your engines kind of cooling down as you're doing the research and as you're shopping things around. Sometimes if it's something you truly want, you will continue to get more and more hype and excited about it. But sometimes just the effort of having to shop the thing around might make you change your mind so that you don't even have to go through that process. Or as you're going through the process, you just get less and less excited about the purchase and then decide not to make it in the end. Or you end up with getting exactly what you want, but at least you know you did your due diligence. So, it's almost like the sleep on it thing. It's just a little bit different, more designed for getting better pricing. Number 4 is to establish very clear, and yes, if you have to, written down definitions of what constitutes an emergency. What guidelines do you want to use to determine what is or is not an emergency situation when it comes to your finances? Now, my household and frankly, all of my clients, we have the same definition because I essentially provided the definition. So in my world, a emergency is a legitimate necessity for life that cannot wait and your budget cannot accommodate it. This is all about, one, safeguarding your emergency fund, keeping your emergency fund, fully funded as long as you possibly can. But it's also about creating a sense of trust and transparency with your spouse. Now, here's the thing. If you two are both functioning on the same definition of what an emergency is, then that means that if one of the spouses has to make a snap decision about the emergency situation, at least because they're using the same guidelines, they should come to the same decision. So it's less likely to create friction in the family. It also means that when you're having a discussion about something that's coming up, maybe you didn't make a snap decision. Maybe you had a little bit of time to have a conversation about it. You guys should still end up on the same page, or at least you're using the same criteria to evaluate, and now you just have to figure out these little nuances behind, okay, one might consider that this is not a legitimate necessity. One person might consider it is a legit necessity. Well, why do we have these differences? And we can talk it out there. You know what I mean? But ultimately, it's about creating a shared guideline that increases communication and increases trust. And at the end of the day, it safeguards your emergency fund, because if you have to wait for it to be a legitimate necessity that cannot wait and that your budget cannot accommodate, you're definitely a lot less likely to dip into it. Number 5 is to establish clear guidelines around lending and giving away money to others. Now, I've talked about this one before. I actually did an entire YouTube video about it. Not YouTube video. I did a podcast episode about it back when the podcast was like 45 minutes long. I might have a YouTube video up about it. I don't know. If I do, I'll link it. But anyway, the point is that you should have very clear guidelines, especially if you're married, but you should honestly have them if you're single too, to minimize the likelihood of you getting taken advantage of. But you really need to have some clear guidelines on when you are going to be willing to lend money and when you're going to be willing to give away money. Now, the only reason I say lend and give away is because just because my household does not lend money and just because I do not believe that anyone should lend money for any reason doesn't change the fact that there are a lot of people that are still going to go out there and do it. That's the only reason why I'm saying both. But in my household, we do not lend money because we do not believe in taking money out of our bank account that we are not planning on or expecting to lose unless it is an investment. So if you run into a situation and I give you the money, I'm giving it to you. It is a gift. It is something you can have. I give it away with no expectation of you paying it back, because I do not want there to be an unnecessary rift in our family, in our friendship, and in whatever our relationship is, because you decide or something happens or you're unable to repay the money on the timeline that was agreed upon. It's just, in my view and in my husband's view, an unnecessary risk. So what often happens is, because you give away money, well, you lend money with the expectation that you're going to give it back, you're more likely to lend more than you would have just given away. You will be like, okay, I'm going to lend you this money, but they promise they'll give it back to me in 15 days. And so with that money, I can still pay my bill. So it's okay for me to give them more than what my budget says I can afford to do. So that's another reason why we do not believe in lending money. We only give away money. Now, that being said, we also have a set of questions that we have around, when we are and are not willing to give money to a certain situation. And I encourage you to have your own questions as well. So one of the first questions that we like to ask is, what happened that created this sudden financial need? We need to know the circumstances, because there's just certain levels of foolishness that my husband and I are not willing to support. We also ask if it meets our definition of an emergency. Is it a legitimate necessity? Is it something that cannot wait? Is it something that their budget cannot accommodate? And if it does not meet our definition of an emergency, we will not give money to that particular cause. You don't have to ask these questions, but it's important that you have a set of questions that you have. So that's another one. Have clear set of guidelines around when you will and will not lend or give away money. Spending rule number 6 is one that doesn't actually feel like a spending rule. It's really about establishing some healthy habits to deal with your emotions. So essentially what I want you to do is, I want you to design plans and routines that are designed to help you address the emotional spending triggers that you have in a healthy way. Now, let's be honest about it. All of us have spending triggers. There's been times when I would go shopping just because I was feeling really, really anxious about something, and I literally could have used something that was in my closet for whatever it was, but I was feeling so anxious about it. And it's like, nope, I got to go shop. And you know how it is. You walk in certain stores and you're not walking out with one thing. You're walking out with like this sweater is actually, I was shopping for blazers, and this sweater I'm wearing right now came out of me shopping for blazers. So this had nothing to do with what the original shopping trip was about. So, but I was feeling really anxious about the thing that we were going to. I'm happy about the blazers that I bought, but that's not the point. But the reality is that we all have some sort of spending trigger, even if we're not the type of person who really likes to shop. And for that reason, we need to be intentional about, one, figuring out and understanding what those spending triggers are, and then establishing some routines, some habits that will do to address those spending triggers. So if you're the type of person who tends to spend money when you're feeling depressed, then we need to find a way for you to deal with your depression in a healthier manner. Maybe it's about having people that you can reach out to and talk to, having a counselor that you can reach out to, have discussions with. Maybe there's actually certain books that you can read that will make you feel better. Maybe you can try some journaling exercises that will help you to feel better. Or maybe if you're angry, screaming into a pillow, beating up the pillow, having some sort of workout routine that helps you get out all of that extra energy. One of the things that I've done is, when I'm feeling anxious, I will actually go out on a walk. Now, I have a dog, so he gives me a really good excuse to go on a walk anyway. So I already get 3 walks a day. And if I'm feeling super anxious, or sometimes even if my husband is feeling super anxious, be like, all right, put on your shoes, Alpha, let's get your, what's that thing? Get your leash, and let's go on a walk. And sometimes just going on that walk is very good for anxiety. And so we have found a bunch of cheap, free, very low cost ways in which to help us to manage some of the emotional triggers that would once cause us to spend money. And there you have it, 6 spending rules that you can use. And honestly, I believe any family dynamic, any household with any group of people, that will help you to curb your spending. It's also going to help you, keep money in your bank account. It's going to help you avoid money fights. It's also going to help you deal with those emotional triggers in a healthier way, which, there's a whole downward spiral that comes with bad spending mistakes and emotional triggers, and they actually ping pong off of each other. I've done a video about it, so yeah, go ahead and check that out. That being said, I do know that working on establishing these things, especially writing them down on paper, can feel really uncomfortable and really odd. However, it can have a massive effect on your spending. It can have a massive effect on your mental health, and it can have a massive positive effect on your marriage. Because let me tell you, my husband and I no longer have money fights, and trust me, we used to have some ring dingers, okay? Whew! Ciao. But just let me know. I want to know in the comments when you're looking at these spending rules, are there any of them that you're thinking about implementing? Are there any that you already have in your household? Or are there other spending rules that you have that you think might be something that lots of other people can use as well? Go ahead and drop them in the comments. I would absolutely love to see what they are. And hey, you never know, you might have something that can help another household improve their financial situation as well. Speaking of helping other people to improve their financial situation, I am a money coach. So if you're having some complications around figuring out what are the right spending rules for you or implementing the very spending rules that I just talked about, but you're trying to figure out what your thresholds, what your guidelines should be, well, I'm happy to help. All you have to do is just grab a free 30-minute session with me, which I call a financial breakthrough strategy session. And they're really, really easy to get. All you have to do is go to my website at tianabclewis.com/breakthrough. Fill out a tiny bit of information, schedule a call, and boom, you're done. It only takes a couple of minutes, and there's no risk because it's 100% free. You don't pay a dime except for a little bit of your time. And when you come out of the session, trust and believe, if you don't have you're gonna have some spending rules, you're gonna have some spending guidelines, you're gonna have some strategy, sis. You're gonna be ready to do the things that you need to do to improve your financial situation and to hit the goals that you have for your finances that will then allow you to do what it is God's calling you to do full time. Because that's what this whole channel is about. Now wait, real quick, before you go and grab a spot on my calendar, make sure that you let me know that you enjoyed this video by liking the video and clicking the big red button below to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell so that you're notified every time I drop brand new money tips and biblical strategies designed to help you bust through the financial barriers that have you saying, not yet, hold up, wait a minute, to what it is that God has called you to do. Look, I've told you once, I've told you twice, I'm telling you for a third time. This channel is all about helping you do exactly what it is God called you to do and eliminating green cotton as a roadblock. So come, let's team up. Let's do this thing together. All right. So you go ahead and go watch some more videos. I'm going to share some at the end. And yeah, I'm going to get back to work. So love you. Bye-bye.